evening. Welcome to the Virtual College Exploration for all Illinois students, sponsored by the Illinois Association for College Admission Counseling and StriveScan. Thanks for joining us. I do have a few housekeeping announcements before we get started. You can use the question and answer button on your screen to type in your question to the presenter at any time. Your camera and microphone are off, so the panelists cannot see or hear you. This is just one of many different sessions happening, so please be sure to check back at the full schedule at www.iacac.org. The presentation is also being recorded and will be available to you within about a week, also at www.iacac.org. With that, I'd like to turn it over to our presenter, Emily Nicotera from the University of Toronto.
Great, thank you so very much. I'm just gonna share my screen quickly for you so that you can see my slides, and then we will dive in. All right, so thank you everyone for joining me this evening. I'm so delighted that you're here to learn more about the University of Toronto, and I'm really excited to share more information about U of T. As mentioned, my name is Emily, and I'm part of the recruitment team at the University of Toronto. I'm also a very proud U of T alum. I graduated with an honors Bachelor of Arts with a specialist in English and a minor in Spanish back in 2008. So it's been a little bit of time since I was an undergraduate student, but I had a really incredible experience as a student at U of T. And so I'm always really excited to talk more about the university with students. So we will get started formally with the presentation in just a second, but I wanted to encourage you to submit any questions that you think of through the Q&A button while I'm presenting. If you're worried you might forget a question, that's something that you were thinking of, feel free to go ahead and toss that into the Q&A. And then when I'm done with the kind of formal part of the presentation, I'll be happy to take up any of the questions that are there. Is there anything else I need to address before I start? All right, I'm going to dive in. So since we have a relatively short amount of time this evening to talk about one of the world's best universities, I really want to simplify U of T for you and give you three main takeaways from this presentation. So the first is that University of Toronto is Canada's flagship research university. The second is that we are a network of unique communities in the heart of one of the most dynamic regions in the world. And the third is that U of T students can mix and match programs and experiences to really build personalized degrees. So everything we're going to talk about tonight is going to reflect back on those three items. And we're going to dive right in with that first one. So, University of Toronto is Canada's top research university, and we are well known around the world for that academic reputation. We not only are Canada's best university, we are one of the world's best universities. And your U of T degree can take you anywhere after graduation. Now, that legacy of discovery and innovation is reflected in all different ways, but it helps us to attract the best and brightest academics and students from all over the world to our campuses. Insulin, the world's first nerve transplant, and stem cell research all began at U of T. And these are just a few examples of that discovery and innovation. We've also produced Academy Award winners, Olympic athletes, prime ministers, Nobel laureates, and award-winning authors and thinkers like Malcolm Gladwell and Margaret Atwood. So with that, we will move on to that second takeaway that I mentioned, and that is more about our network of communities and the region in which we're located. Toronto itself is one of the most diverse cities in the world, with about half the population born outside of Canada. That includes me. I didn't tell you at the beginning, but I'm American and speaking a language other than English. Also me, but not French, it's Spanish. And Toronto is very safe, clean, and really has something for everyone to enjoy. It's a really excellent place to be a student, and there's a lot to explore and lots of fun neighborhoods, some of the things that I like the most about Toronto. Now, U of T specifically, we were founded in 1827, and we're actually older than the city of Toronto. Our St. George campus in particular is a historic landmark in the center of the city. And as the city of Toronto has grown into Canada's largest city, we've grown into Canada's largest university, which means you have the most choices. One of the first choices we'll ask you to make is which campus you're interested in studying at, because we have three amazing options to choose from. Now, they're all located within about an hour of each other, and each campus offers the same high quality education. Each campus is self-contained and offers our students everything they need, from academic support to student life. And when you graduate, you're earning a U of T degree, regardless of which campus you choose. They all offer different environments and different settings, and the size and location of each campus varies. But all you need to remember is that it's one great university with 3 distinct campuses. So you can really think about which is going to be the best fit for you. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about each of these, beginning with University of Toronto, Mississauga, which is about a half an hour west of downtown Toronto, located in the city of Mississauga. This is the mid-sized campus, well, a Canadian mid-sized campus. Our campuses tend to be larger in Canada, with about 15,000 students, and it's located on about 225 acres of beautiful green space with lots of trees and grass. It's also a very modern campus with lots of new buildings, and they're doing a lot of really cool environmental research and bringing that right into the infrastructure on campus. So they're doing, all of these new buildings have rainwater capture and geothermal heating. It's kind of exciting. Next, we will move downtown so that I can introduce you to the St. George campus. This is the founding campus at U of T, and it's located right in the heart of the city center. There are over 35,000 undergraduate students here, so it is the largest campus in terms of student body. And there's a mix of older Gothic style buildings along with new and modern state-of-the-art facilities. So you have that mix of old and new right downtown. And finally, we will move to U of T Scarborough, which is located in the east end of the city. This is another mid-sized campus with over 14,000 students. Similar to Mississauga, located on lots of parkland. The Highland Creek runs right along Scarborough campus and has incredible hiking trails right attached to campus. So lots of access to nature, if that's something that interests you. And again, similar to Mississauga, there are many new modern buildings here, and the campus continues to grow to this day. So there's a lot of construction happening that will be wrapped up soon. Now, in terms of what you can actually study, it's based on which learning communities you're part of. And we call these learning communities faculties at U of T. Some schools might call them colleges, but we'll call them faculties. And they include programs like engineering, architectural and visual studies, kinesiology, and music. And these 4 are specialized programs that are offered at the St. George campus. Arts, science, and business is the widest area of programs that we have at U of T, and these kinds of programs are offered across all 3 campuses. Right, my slides are not cooperating. There they go. All right. So when you're thinking about art, science, and business programs, you will have a lot of flexibility, and there's a lot of ability to mix and match with these programs. And if you apply to Arts, Science, and Business at the St. George campus, it's called the Faculty of Arts and Science. And every student within that faculty will also have to be a member of one of our colleges. The college system is a pretty important part of life to an arts and science student because every student belongs to one of these colleges. They all provide residence, academic counseling, and social activities, and a college becomes your home base outside of the classroom. Regardless of which college you're a part of, you will have access to the full range of courses and programs, so they don't affect that. It's really just your community that you're part of. So where you live, where you access support services and resources, and often where you make your closest friends. I often share that my closest friends to this day are people I met the day I moved into my college. But you also have a lot of support services through your college. Regardless of which community you're a part of though, once you get to U of T, we really want to make sure that you're happy and have everything you need to reach your full potential. And there's lots of ways that we would support our students in this, no matter which campus or which college you're a part of or faculty. So there's things like the Academic Success Centers, learning strategists, peer mentors, as well as alumni mentorship programs. And our professors all have office hours so that they're able to meet with you on a one-on-one basis. We provide both academic and personal counseling as well. And most U of T students are taking advantage of all of these services and programs because 91% of our first year students do continue into second year. And that's something that is really important to us at U of T. In keeping with that, this year, the vast majority of our undergraduate programs and courses are being offered virtually. About 90% of undergraduate studies is all being done virtually. And all of these support services are also being offered virtually, so that our students, even though they may not be on campus, still have access to all of the same things they normally would. And we thought that was important to mention. I also wanted to briefly mention that our main message for this year, when we're considering the global pandemic and all of the disruption that it's caused, is that students will not be disadvantaged due to exam cancellations, schools changing grading policies, or any other disruptions caused by COVID-19. So I wanted to mention that as well for you, just so you know that that is something that we are paying attention to. And that brings us to our third and final takeaway, and that's that ability to mix and match programs and experiences to build a personalized degree. There are about 700 program options to choose from. We're not going to try to talk about all of them tonight. That would get a little bit absurd, but it is the best selection of programs in Canada. So you have a lot of options, and we're going to try to give you a little bit of an overview of the kind of programs that we offer. I mentioned earlier that arts, business, and science programs are the widest range of programs, and that they're offered across all 3 campuses. When we're talking about arts, that includes programs like English, which is what I studied, history, philosophy, international relations, sociology, political science, and over 50 different languages that you can choose to take. So again, a really wide range of programs. Toronto is the financial capital of Canada and the 3rd largest financial district in North America. So our students in our various business programs have lots of opportunities to take advantage of this. And when it comes to science, we publish more scientific research than any other public university in North America. So you have the opportunity to conduct your own research as early as your 2nd year of study. And that exists across all different disciplines, but I think is especially popular in the sciences. So that's why we mention it there. Now, this is the largest group of programs, but we also have our specialized programs, and those include engineering. We have the largest and highest ranked faculty of engineering in Canada with 8 core programs, and those are chemical, civil, computer, electrical, industrial, materials, mechanical, and mineral. I know I wasn't reading that one. I know those off by heart. So you can apply directly into one of those core programs if you know that's what you want. The second item you'll see listed there is track 1, or undeclared engineering. That gives you a whole year to explore all 8 of those options and choose the one you want after that year. And the third option is engineering science, which is an enriched program where our students spend their first 2 years in high-level multidisciplinary engineering courses. And then after 2nd year, students can choose from one of 8 different majors, and those include things like aerospace, robotics, and finance. Pretty exciting options across engineering. And then we have our 3 smallest programs. And again, these 4 are only at the St. George campus. Beginning with architectural and visual studies, these programs offer studio time, access to Daniel's faculty, and a foundation in design thinking. They're really great preparation for careers in architecture, urban planning, interior design, and more. Kinesiology is the study of human movement. It's often called exercise science at US universities, so you might be more familiar with that term. But this program has lots of opportunities for our students to apply what they're learning and get outside of the classroom. There are sports practicums and community placements built right into the academics of the program. And graduates often go into fields such as physical therapy, sports medicine, chiropractics, and more. And finally, what better place to study music than in the heart of downtown Toronto? Faculty of Music is the smallest faculty at U of T, and because of that, specializes in one-on-one instruction, as well as unique ensemble opportunities. And faculty members of the Faculty of Music, the instructors, tend to be working musicians in the city, often members of the Toronto Symphony Orchestra or the Canadian Opera Company. So there's lots of opportunities to learn from real working musicians. Now, one of the things I talked about earlier on was the ability to build your own degree. That's really personalized to what your interests through our specialist majors and minors. Specialist programs tend to be between a half and 1/3 of all of the courses you might take at U of T. A major program is often about half and slightly less than half, maybe between 1/3 and half of your total studies. And a minor program is usually about 1/4 of your total studies. And so students can do one specialist program They can combine to do any 2 majors within their campus or faculty, or they can do 1 major with any 2 minors. So that really gives you a ton of flexibility. And with over 10,000 courses, a student could specialize in engineering and minor in music, or you could double major in biology and history and have a minor in the language. There are literally thousands of combinations, and you could even design a degree that no one has done before. I said early on that I did English and Spanish. I have a specialist in English and a minor in Spanish. My minor is extra. I didn't need that to graduate, but it fit into my schedule, and I really liked taking Spanish classes, and it allowed me to do a summer abroad opportunity. Which brings me to my next topic, which is that you can customize your extracurricular and co-curricular components as well. Study abroad and those global experiences are one example of that, with exchange programs and summer abroad, which is what I did. But there's also internships, paid work placement programs, like our co-op program at Scarborough, and our professional experience year co-op program for engineering students, as well as those research opportunities that I keep bringing up. And of course, as Canada's largest university, you can be involved in any of our over 800 different clubs, committees, and organizations, and Canada's largest athletic program with our U of T Varsity Blues, or our extensive intramural program. It's about 10,000 students every year that participate in that one. And I certainly did as a student. And sometimes we even do as staff. We often have a softball team every summer. So there's lots and lots of ways to get involved. I hope this all sounds interesting and exciting to you, because the next part of our session is about how we actually get you there. So we're going to go through a little bit about the application process and the admission requirements, starting with that initial application. And these are going to look a little bit different when you're looking at Canadian schools, in particular Ontario schools. We always have a 2-step application in the province of Ontario. And there's 2 different applications you can choose from when you're looking at U of T. We have our direct international application. If you reside outside of Canada, which all of you do in Illinois, and are not studying or have never studied in a Canadian high school and are not applying to any other Ontario universities, I would recommend that you use this international application. It's a little bit cheaper. That's why I recommend it. If you are applying to other universities in the province of Ontario, you need to use an application called the OUAC, or Ontario Universities Application Center. That application gives you 3 choices that you can use across the entire province. And if you want those choices at other Ontario universities, you need to use that one. You pay a little bit more for it, but it's worth it if you want those choices. Now, either application will actually give you 3 choices. You can use more than one choice within the University of Toronto if you would like. So for example, you could apply to computer science or business at all 3 campuses if you want to have some options. You're allowed 1 program per campus, or in the case of St. George, where there's multiple faculties, you're allowed 1 program per faculty, the maximum of 3 choices. So each of the areas highlighted in white there will allow you 1 choice, up to a total of 3. And our admissions team will consider you for each choice concurrently. So you'll get a decision for each choice that you make with us. And some of you might be interested in doing some of that personalization that I talked about with double majors and minors, but keep in mind that on the initial application, you're not applying to all those different combinations of programs. You're really applying to the area that you're most interested in. And then you have that ability to mix and match programs later on once you're a student. And don't forget that if you apply to the Faculty of Arts and Science on the St. George campus, we are going to ask you to list your 3 preferred colleges on this initial application. So keep that in mind. But I will say that is probably the most complicated part of the application. One thing you'll find that applications in Canada is that they're pretty simple. This one, whichever one you choose, is going to be really basic. It's going to take about 10 minutes to complete. We're going to ask for your basic biographical information and what high school you go to, your campus and faculty of interest, and that's about it. After that, we are going to follow up with you within about a week and direct you to our Join U of T site. And that is where you complete the rest of your application. The Join U of T site, we'll send you the login information of that as well. And through that site, you can track the status of your application. The first time you log in, we'll ask you to tell us what system of education you're completing. You are all U.S. high school students, so that's pretty easy. But you'll also be asked to submit your transcripts and self-report your grades through this portal. The self-reported grade form is pretty straightforward. We're going to ask for all of your junior year courses and then all of your senior year courses. If you're taking AP or IB classes, we'll ask you to list them as senior year courses, since that's a high level course, even if you might have taken that as a junior. So we'll ask you to list those right on that form. And when we initially ask you to do this, it might be pretty early in the process. And especially with the delays to the school year this year, you might not have grades for senior year yet, and that is okay. What we will ask you to do is list your final grades for your junior year and list the courses that you're taking for senior year. We want to know what you're enrolled in. That's really important to us. I know not every American school will check or care that much about that during the process, but we will. And we'll ask you to list NA, not available, for your grades that aren't available yet. And then when you get some progress reports or grade reports, you can go back into the system and update your grades there. In terms of submitting your transcripts, you have two options. You can either have your school submit them through Naviance or Parchment. If they use one of those systems, we are happy to accept them electronically in that way. The other option is to upload them directly to your portal. Either way is fine with us. We ask that you don't do both because then we end up with double documents and it slows things down a little bit. But either option is fine with us, whatever is easier for you. Now, for most programs at U of T, we are making decisions based on your grades. There's a couple exceptions that we'll talk about, but your grades that you submit through that site are going to be the most important thing for us in considering your application. But you can also log into the Join site regularly to continue to check the status of your application. That is where you will find your admission decision in that Join portal. You can also use that site to apply for residence, and we'll talk about some timelines for that in a second. First, the programs that do require something beyond your grades in school. They're all the programs that are listed here on this slide. They all have slightly different supplemental applications, but basically they want to know a little bit more about you, why you want to come into those programs. They may include short answer style questions, essay style questions. A couple of them, Rotman Commerce and Engineering, even have video responses. Not live like this, it's more of a pre-recorded thing run through your browser. They give you instructions and a chance to practice using the software, so nothing to be worried about. But they're all a little bit different. I think the other important thing to know about these is that no one is looking to trick you. They're really just trying to get to know you a little bit better. And the other thing I should mention for students applying to our engineering programs, your Join U of T login will actually redirect you to a separate online student portal for engineering, because engineering at U of T has their own admissions office. So they're going to ask you to submit things through a different site. Now, if any of you have not been studying in the US or another English-speaking school system for 4 years or more, we may ask for proof of English from you. There's a few examples of the most popular tests on this slide, but if you've been at a school in Illinois or anywhere else in the US for 4 years or more, you don't need to worry about this. Now, as promised, here's a timeline that will kind of guide you through the application process. The initial application, whether it's the OUAC or the international application, we recommend that you submit that by November 7th. And you'll see why when we get to the end, that last bubble. But we really encourage students to apply early. We don't use early decision or early action the way many US schools do. We call it an early recommended deadline. And that's because we have rolling monthly offers of admission decisions that in a normal year would start in December and carry all the way through April. We often have a May round too, but for US students, we really try to focus on getting decisions out by the end of April, because we know that May 1 is the important response deadline in the US. So because we have those monthly decisions, this year we don't really anticipate December being a big round because of the delays to the school years and everyone's grades, their junior year being disrupted. We anticipate December being a pretty small round, if any offers. Maybe no offers will go out then. But in order to be considered even in that January round, you want to follow that November 7th guideline, and then you'll see the deadline to submit your self-reported grades is November 15th. And again, this is recommended, but it is to your advantage if you want to be considered in those earlier rounds and possibly get an earlier decision from us. February 1st is the absolute last day to submit documentation to us, and the supplemental applications all have their own deadlines, but they will tell you when they would like you to submit them. And then the last day to apply for residence is March 31st. We guarantee housing for all first-year students, but you do need to click through that application and say, yes, I would like to live on campus, to let us know. Now, in terms of what we are looking for in terms of admission requirements, we are, as many schools are, test optional for 2021. We would normally require SATs or ACTs for admission, but given the complications with testing this year, it just really wouldn't be fair to ask for them. So there is no penalty and no disadvantage if you cannot or choose not to submit test scores for this year. If you are a junior and you're applying for 2022, check back with us next summer. We hope to have some updates by that time. We don't know how this cycle will go and what we will be asking for next year yet. So we'll hope to have some updates for you soon. Generally speaking, we are looking for grades in the B+ to A- range and above. It does really depend on what program you're applying to. The most competitive programs tend to be computer science, engineering, and business. Those tend to be those programs where you really need super, super strong grades to get into. After that, sciences, life sciences, physical, mathematical sciences tend to be next. And then arts programs tend to be after that. But there's always exceptions, and there's some variation between the campuses too. It's all based on the demand and who applies in that given year. So it's a little bit hard to predict. I did mention that your first quarter grades or whatever grades you can give to us fairly early in the year are important to us. So we highlight that again here. And then I also want to briefly mention prerequisite subjects. We have a lot of these, I think more than you'll find at most American schools. And that's because there's some differences in the US and Ontario high school systems. So the most common one is calculus. And for most math, science, or business programs, we will ask you to present a full year of calculus. Now, the Faculty of Arts and Science does make some exceptions and will use pre-calculus for US high school students who are very strong students otherwise, but weren't able to take calculus because the high school systems are pretty different. It's not always structured to let you take a calculus course. But our Mississauga and Scarborough campuses are a little bit less flexible depending on the program. In some cases, they're more flexible. But if you have specific questions about that, it's best to reach out to us directly so that we can give you some detailed answers based on your program of interest. The other program I always like to highlight when we talk about prerequisites is engineering. In a normal year, engineering would be asking for 2 years of calculus, a year of pre-calc, and a year of calculus, 2 years of chemistry, and 2 years of physics. That's pretty unusual to be able to do in most US high schools. I know it's possible in some, but they will often recommend instead of that, taking AP Calculus, AP Chemistry, and AP Physics, which is again, a pretty challenging course load and not something that every student necessarily has access to. So engineering always asks US students who maybe don't meet one of those options to contact them directly for advice on how best to apply to those programs and what their options could be. So I wanted to make sure to mention that here as well. Now, we automatically consider every student for scholarships as a part of the application process. So you do not need to apply for scholarships. We are really pleased to announce that last year we added some new scholarship opportunities specifically for international students. The International Scholar Award, which is what it's called, does not require an application. So it's part of these automatic scholarships and you're considered automatically when you apply based on merit alone. There's no extracurricular or financial need components. And the vast majority of our scholarships, whether they're for everyone or just international students, do work this way. So you don't need to apply, but you can use our new Awards Explorer site to explore those options. If you Google Awards Explorer U of T, you will find it, I promise. And that'll let you view and filter the options based on your situation. One other thing that I do like to mention is the Lester B. Pearson International Scholarship. The scholarship covers tuition and room and board for all 4 years, but it does require a nomination from your school, and each school can nominate one student per year. So if you are your school's nominee, we will send you the link to the application, and the deadline to be nominated is the end of November each year. I think this year it's November 30th. So if that's something you're interested in, talk to your school counselor and see if that might be an option for you. Now, I always toss in a few frequently asked questions that are kind of US specific because I think that's really helpful for your interest. So the financial aid side, we talked about merit-based scholarships, but need-based financial aid typically comes from your home country. If you are Canadian or a dual citizen living in the US, then you actually are eligible for need-based financial aid through the last province where you or your parents lived. And if you are not a Canadian citizen, if you're an American citizen, then we are part of the US federal loan program, and there is some money through that program that is portable internationally. Usually it is the PLUS loans that the Department of Education allows you to bring abroad, but we are part of that program. So on your FAFSA application, there's a separate form you have to fill out after, but if you're working on that, some of that funding is eligible to be brought abroad. One thing I haven't talked about at all this evening is letters of recommendation. We do not require these. These are never required at U of T. In fact, we ask that you not submit them to us if you can. That would be great. If you are a dual citizen or a Canadian citizen living in the US, the application process is exactly the same. There's nothing different about it. The only thing that might be different is if you are a Canadian, you will be eligible to pay the domestic tuition as opposed to the international tuition. So that is quite a big discount. We often call it the passport scholarship. So keep that in mind. In terms of tracking demonstrated interest, we are delighted that you're here to learn more about U of T, but we don't use demonstrated interest as part of our consideration process. And the last one that everyone always wants to know is, what is the admissions rate? Now, because at U of T, students don't apply undecided, they apply to one of about 50 different admission categories based on their campus and kind of area of programs they're interested in. We would have about 50 different admissions rates. We do not publish these. It would get far too complicated. I think if you have Naviance, you will see 16% published there, but that is a raw average and is not actually a helpful number that translates to any one program. So I would discourage you from taking that too seriously. We had to put something in there. So if you're really concerned about the specific program you're interested, I would encourage you to reach out to someone from our team, and we are always happy to provide more details and give you some advice based on your specific situation. So that is the end of my formal part of my presentation tonight. And I would be glad to start looking at some of your questions. You can see we already have a few coming in. So from Maureen, since the SAT is optional, is it considered in the admissions process if you have a score, or will it be totally omitted from the process? That is a really good question. It will be considered if you choose to submit it, but it will be one factor. And even when we always required SATs or ACTs, your grades in school were still the most important part. So if you want to submit it, we can consider it, but your grades in school will still be the most important part. So I hope that helps. Excellent. All right, from Carla, do we accept scholarships and financial aid that are based in the US? We are happy to work with any scholarship programs that are allowing their funding to come to Canada. So yes, as long as the funding organization is allowing you to bring that funding abroad, our awards team can usually figure out a way that we can accept it. So in most cases, yes, it's pretty rare that we've had funders who want students to be able to bring that funding to U of T, and we haven't been able to accept it. In terms of financial aid, that's really a question of the US government and what they allow you to bring abroad. We even have some programs that are considered ineligible by the US Department of Education. So if you have lots of detailed questions about that, we can go into it, but even though we are technically an approved institution, there's always some exceptions on the financial aid side, and those are instituted by the US Department of Education. So I hope that answers that part of that. Getting close. So do we help international students to get their visas? Yes. We have certified immigration advisors on all 3 of our campuses. So if students have trouble or have questions in trying to get their study permit, most US citizens don't actually need a visa. Usually all they need is a study permit. So it's a little bit less of a process. And our immigration advisors can help them if they have any questions, if they run into trouble. I will say that I found that most US students have not had a lot of trouble in my experience. Now, I am not a certified immigration advisor, so I'm not allowed to give immigration advice. I am only allowed to direct you to our websites and to our immigration advisors, but there are staff on campus to do that for you. So thank you, Carla, for the excellent questions. If there are any other questions, I might stop sharing actually, so that I can see them a little bit better. All right, so if there are no other questions, I am happy to keep sharing other information about U of T, but I don't want to step on anyone's questions. So please feel free to send them in if you do think of anything. I want to give a few, I can't submit anything to the chat for you. Never mind. I was going to send through a few links, but I guess we'll do that in a follow-up email after the session. So everyone will receive an email from us after the session, probably within a week. It depends on when I get your information through the event, but we will make sure that you all get an email from us after with a few links to some important things that might be helpful for you. We have another question from Carla. What is the GPA requirement? So it does depend on the program, but I can share some middle 50% data about kind of unweighted GPAs. We are generally looking at an unweighted GPA. And for the past few years, that's been in that middle 50% has been in the 3.6 to 4.0 range. So it depends a lot on the program and the campus that you're applying to, as well as who else applies in any given year. But that should give you some kind of guidance on what kind of students tend to be competitive at U of T.
Okay, well, I think if that's all for questions, we want to thank Emily for her time and for presenting about the University of Toronto. Thank you all for joining us. When you close the window, there will be a link to a quick survey, 4 questions, and we appreciate any feedback you can provide. Also, just remember that there are many other sessions being hosted over the next couple of weeks. So be sure to sign up and look at the offerings at www.iacac.org. In about a week, you'll be able to find this recording as well as other session recordings also at www.iacac.org. So again, thank you, Emily, for your time and great work. And I hope you all have a great evening. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful night.